Think you're good at spotting fakes? Think again. Some of history's biggest lies went undetected for centuries. We're talking about fake documents so good they fooled the world's smartest experts, changed the course of nations, and rewrote history books. These aren't your everyday forgeries, these are the con jobs that shaped our world. 10. The Privilegium Maius, 1358-59. Duke Rudolph IV of Austria threw the medieval version of a temper tantrum in 1356. The Holy Roman Emperor had just excluded him from the Cool Kids Club, a group called the Prince Electors, who got to choose new emperors. Rudolph wanted in on that action badly. So what did Rudolph do? He went full criminal mastermind. He hired forgers to create 5 fake documents, claiming Austria had special rights from ancient Rome itself. Get this. These papers said Julius Caesar and Nero personally gave Austria these powers. Talk about name-dropping! The fake documents invented a totally made-up title, Archduchy. This brilliant piece of fiction gave the Habsburg family almost as much clout as the Prince Electors. The famous poet Petrarch took one look and called BS immediately. But here's the kicker, nobody cared. Emperor Frederick III made them official law in 1453 anyway. These fake papers worked like a charm for almost 500 years. They helped turn the Habsburg family into one of Europe's most powerful dynasties. The truth only came out in 1852, when expert Wilhelm Wattenbach finally proved what Petrarch knew all along. 9. The Chronicle of Ingolf, 14th century. For hundreds of years, experts treated Ingolf's Chronicle like their Bible of early English history. This book claimed to be written by Abbot Ingolf in the 1000 and was packed with juicy details about Croyland Abbey and the Norman Conquest. Scholars quoted it left and right. Plot twist. The whole thing was bogus. Someone cooked it up in the 1300, likely to help Croyland Abbey win a land dispute. The forger, now known as Pseudo-Ingolf, was wickedly clever. He mixed real sources with fake documents, making sure every fake bit just happened to support Croyland Abbey's legal claims. What a coincidence! The forgery was so slick that nobody caught on until the 1800s. By then, too late. The fake chronicle had infected hundreds of history books and created facts about medieval England that never happened. 8. The Lead Books of Sacromonte, 1595 to 1606. Picture this. Treasure hunters digging near Granada, Spain in 1595 suddenly hit the jackpot. 22 books made of lead, old human bones, writing in Arabic, Latin, and weird letters nobody could read. The books claimed to contain the Virgin Mary's personal teachings to early Christian martyrs. This was massive news for the Moriscos, Muslims who'd been forced to become Christians. These lead books seemed to prove Arabs were actually Spain's first Christians. People went absolutely nuts. Pilgrims swarmed the site. Some swore miracles were happening. The Vatican smelled a rat, though. They hauled the books to Rome and studied them for 40 years. Yes, 40 years! Apparently the Vatican doesn't do rush jobs. In 1682, the church finally announced, "Fake and heretical." The books were likely made by Moriscos trying to save their skins from the Spanish Inquisition. Even after the church called them fake, many Spanish scholars basically said, "Nah, we're good," and kept defending them for another century. The Vatican finally returned these lead paperweights to Granada in 2000. 7. The False Decretals of Pseudo-Isidore, 850. French church leaders in the 800 had a massive headache. Local kings kept pink-slipping bishops, and other archbishops were stirring up trouble. The church reformers needed a fix, so they came up with a plan that was bold, brilliant, and totally illegal. They would forge about 100 letters from early popes. The forger called himself Isidore Mercator, obviously a fake name. This guy was a genius con artist who mixed real church documents with fake papal orders. Every single fake part did two things: protected bishops from getting fired and gave the Pope more muscle. The false decretals became the Middle Ages' most successful scam. Popes used them constantly. They became part of church law. For 800 years, they shaped church policies and helped make the Pope stronger than kings. Protestant scholar David Blondel finally exposed the truth in 1628. Way too late, buddy. The fake documents had already flipped the power balance between church and state for good. 6. The Chronicle of Pseudo-Turpin, 12th century. Here's a story that medieval Europe ate up with a spoon. Archbishop Turpin of Reims supposedly traveled with Charlemagne to Spain and wrote down everything. According to Turpin, St. James appeared to Charlemagne in a dream and told him to fight the Moors. The book also described Roland's heroic death at Roncesvalles. One tiny problem. Turpin never wrote a word of it. Someone made up the whole thing centuries after both guys were dead. But medieval Europe didn't care one bit. People made over 200 copies and translated it into every language going. This fake chronicle was a medieval bestseller that did it all. It turned Charlemagne into a legend, got people fired up for crusades, and made the Santiago de Compostela pilgrimage the hot new travel destination. For centuries, people swore it was the real deal. Today, we know it was pure fiction from the 1100. But wow, did it work! The fake chronicle transformed Charlemagne from a regular king into Europe's superhero. 5. Geoffrey of Monmouth's Ancient British Sources, c. 1136. Geoffrey of Monmouth pulled off one of history's greatest literary cons. He claimed he was just translating some ancient British book that told Britain's entire backstory, from Trojan refugees founding the place to King Arthur's glory days. Geoffrey's book introduced the all-star cast, Merlin, Guinevere, and Camelot. It made Arthur into Britain's ultimate hero. Medieval experts bought every word. The book became Britain's origin story, and kings used it to justify why they deserved the throne. Even Shakespeare borrowed from it for King Lear and Cymbeline. Reality check. There was no ancient book. Zero zilch. Geoffrey made it all up, cleverly mixing Welsh legends with Roman stories and throwing in his own wild ideas. He created a fake history that Britain desperately wanted to be true. Some experts at the time side-eyed the whole thing, but serious fact-checking didn't start until the 1500s. By then, game over. Geoffrey's fantasies had become British cultural DNA. 4. The Cosmographia of Ethicus Ister, 8th century. Medieval scholars thought they'd found gold when they discovered this book. It claimed St. Jerome had translated it from an older work by Ethicus Ister, supposedly a pagan philosopher turned Christian who'd traveled everywhere with his brother and adventurous. Medieval scholars treasured this thing. They thought it was one of the few ancient geography books left, so map makers used it to fill in the blank spots. For almost 1,000 years, it shaped how people pictured the world and inspired explorers to go looking for these crazy places. Surprise! Ethicus Ister was as real as unicorns. The whole book was fake, likely written by some Irish monk in the 700s with too much time on his hands. He had a good education, wild ideas, and mad skills at copying Jerome's writing style. Nobody suspected a thing until the Renaissance. 3. The Letter of Prester John, 1165 to 1600. In 1165, European courts got the medieval version of a Nigerian prince email. Someone calling himself Prester John claimed to be a mega-powerful Christian king ruling somewhere beyond Muslim lands. His letter described a fantasy kingdom with a fountain of youth, dudes with horns and eyes on the back of their heads, and giant birds that could snatch up armored knights like French fries. Prester John claimed he was related to the Three Wise Men and promised to help European Christians fight Islam. People lost their minds with excitement. Pope Alexander III even sent his personal doctor to find this guy in 1177. Spoiler alert, the doctor never came back. This hoax had serious legs. It lasted over 400 years and totally changed how Europeans explored the world. Crusaders sat around waiting for Prester John's armies. Portuguese explorers searched Africa for his kingdom. Christopher Columbus packed info about Prester John for his trips. People made over 100 copies of the letter and translated it everywhere. Scholars finally gave up the ghost in the 1600s. 2. The Chronicle of Fredegar's Continuations, 8th century. The Chronicle of Fredegar was a real history book that ended in 642, but medieval scribes kept discovering new chapters that continued the story through Charlemagne's time. How convenient! These add-ons explained how the Carolingians rose to power and the Merovingians fell. For over 1,000 years, experts trusted these additions like gospel. They supposedly came from the 700s and became the go-to source for understanding early medieval politics. The additions shaped how everyone understood the Carolingian takeover of France. Modern scholars dropped a truth bomb. Tons of these continuations were fake. Scribes wrote them centuries later to make Charlemagne's family look awesome. These forgers were pros. They nailed 700 Latin perfectly and mixed in real facts. The fakes were nearly impossible to spot. When scholars exposed these forgeries, it blew up everything. Experts had to completely rethink the whole period. 1. De Sitil Britanniae, 1740 to 1850. In 1747, English expert William Stukely got the letter of a lifetime from Charles Bertram in Copenhagen. Bertram, an English teacher, claimed he'd found an incredible medieval text by someone called Richard of Westminster. This text supposedly mapped out Roman Britain in amazing detail. The text was packed with bombshells. New Roman roads, over 100 unknown cities, and a map that beat anything from ancient times. Stukely was over the moon, especially when Hans Gram, the respected Danish royal librarian, backed Bertram up. This fake document rewrote British history completely. Edward Gibbon used it in his famous book about Rome. William Roy based his maps on its fake routes, which led to Britain's official Ordnance Survey maps. The document even named the Pennine Hills. Bertram just made up the name from classical references. For over 100 years, this was the source on Roman Britain. Then in 1846, German scholar Karl Wex was studying Tacitus when he spotted something fishy. He found printing errors from the 1400s in the text. Busted! Bertram had copied these mistakes from Renaissance books. But the damage was done. The forgery had poisoned countless books and maps. Even today, scholars still find Bertram's made-up facts hiding in books about ancient Britain.